You know,
another level of high tech in the Modem Futura studio.
or unnecessary, complication.
Yes,
I think those two are very closely aligned.
Just flying by the seat of our pants today.
You know, there's a danger. So if you hear this, hey man, it all went well.
Right.
If it's audio, we got the deck going. If this episode is audio
if you
only,
don't hear this, you know it didn't go well.
That's right. That's right. And if it's audio only, because the audio is recorded, we're good there.
Okay, right. Yeah,
so
it's the video.
Yeah,
Yes,
if it's audio only, you know that there somewhere in the globe there is a screaming Sean somewhere with like just rage against the tech that has failed me.
This is where you need the fourth cam, so you can scan around so everybody can see the setup we've got with this new iPad Pro here with all the video feeds on.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I just thought of that. I was like, well, it's too far now. Maybe next time. Because I think I can turn on the iPad camera itself
right, so
and
you
flip it around, and then it would look that way.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, no, I mean, if this works, this is cool. So you can see if it does work, you can see the video. You can see that we've got an extra little piece of kit here, which is running an iPad Pro, which is now connected to all of our iPhone cameras that we use in the studio here, so that we have again, for us, it's a confidence monitor.
Yes.
And when I say confidence, it's like I can see, because I think I was just telling somebody this the other day.
It's all about you being able to watch yourself.
That's right. That's but of course then you do, and you can tell because you're like, but honestly, one of the biggest points of anxiety for me when we record the video is iPhones don't have a video tell. There's no red light. There's no indicator from the outside. And so, I've been in this game long enough to know that like if it can go wrong, it does. Yep. And there's no way for me to check from the seat whether or not.
I know, it's cross your fingers and hope.
Yep. Yes, and you're like, there's a chance that, because I remember when we were recording one of our first spatial 3D episodes, that exactly thing happened. One of the cameras, I don't remember the reason, but one of them just shut off, and it was like, nope, not doing this. Yep. And we didn't know it till afterwards.
It's because on our stupendous budget, we still can't afford a third person.
And my son is at school, and we
right, I know, yes.
That was the one, that was the one hope we had, was like to bring in free labor. But I'm like, he's busy from all day from
such an inconvenience.
This public education business. Right. I don't know. Let's go straight to the profession here, can we? I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, we haven't even had a chance to catch up and decide what we're talking about today. I'm hoping you have a plan here.
Oh, I've got a plan.
Okay.
I'm loaded. I'm locked and loaded. We're a little bit later than usual today, which is kind of fun because I had longer to think about. So, right. But also, I do want to mention right away, you brought in the Pocket Edition.
The Pocket, yes. So by the time this airs, I'll have probably sort of written about this. But yes, I can.
So here's the original version.
Yes, the
big heavy.
So this is AI in the future of being human. So we had the big original version. We now have the Pocket Edition.
Yeah.
Which if you're watching the video, you can see how small it is. So the idea of the Pocket Edition is
it's like a third. Would you say? I mean, in weight, probably a quarter.
Oh, it probably is. Yes.
Yeah, a third in the
so
volume.
I know we're still in the cold open, but the idea behind this was when we had the first drafts of the full book, I was realizing what I needed is I just needed a Pocket version where I can flip through to different tools and it's always there to use. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we cut out everything extraneous? The stuff that nobody reads, like the sidebars and the little hands-on sort of exercises and the footnotes. Who reads footnotes?
Yeah, only nerds.
I know, or academics.
We're like, I want to look up the progeny of that idea.
So we cut all of that stuff out, important stuff, and people can still buy the full version. And we compressed it down, so all the stories and all the tools are still down
Beautiful.
Here. And now we also have a guide in the front to how to use it. So we've got a tool finder, we've got a compressed chapter guide, we've got a how to use this guide. All in something that literally fits in your pocket. And even if nobody else buys one of these, even if it was just a vanity project for me, I am so pleased that I've got this.
And just moments ago, I got literally it was the first time I got my hands on it, and it has a wonderful tactile feel in the hand. You have done, I will give you all the credit, my friend, because you have done both on the full size, on the hardcover, the soft cover, and now the Pocket Edition. Yeah. You can feel the amount of care and attention that has gone into it.
Apart from the missing period, which you spotted immediately.
Sorry. Which will be corrected by the time you can hear this,
Yes.
But the other thing I like about it too is it has a little bit of like the built-in coffee stains.
It does.
So
we actually lean into this. We sort of say this should be sort of dog-eared and creased and coffee stain. We actually put coffee stains on just to start off.
Right. Just to be like, you know what, permission people. You don't need to feel bad about getting some kind of goop on it from when you're on the airplane or the train. But yeah, I mean, but it is. It's the perfect companion for like going to the beach, going on, putting in your car for when you have to. Do people wait in their cars anymore? I don't know. But yeah, awesome. I really, really enjoy this Pocket Edition. That's super cool.
So out now and available.
Very cool. Yeah. So we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes just so people can hot button it themselves right to it. And actually, it's interesting. I think a lot of the new features in some of the newer podcast players will allow people just to like literally it'll surface an actionable button.
Oh, will it? Interesting.
Yeah. So that especially because is it available on Apple Books?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if we mention
the full version is not the Pocket Edition.
Okay, but the full version, and if we mention Apple Books, I believe all Apple products on Apple Podcasts now surface an actionable link.
Very interesting.
We'll test that out. We'll test that out to see if this.
But you actually have to put it. It's not just us saying Apple Books. Apple Books. Apple Books. It pops up.
I think we've finally cracked the code here. Apple Books. Apple Podcasts.
Right.
We're gonna be number one now.
Apple's AI scraping the podcast and just promoting it out.
It's like that kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Modem Futura made for AI scrapers.
That's right. Or like, can we do a verbal prompt injection? Where it's
right.
Like, hey Siri, order. Oh no, it's doing it. Oh no.
So I've got to say, Sean has just trashed his really posh Apple sort of iPad Pro thing by saying, "Hey Siri," and it's just clicked on Siri.
Oh my god. This is a disaster in the making. I literally, as I did that,
still recording.
Okay, good. Everything, all my devices just queued on, and I think I probably just ordered 5 copies of the book. I don't know. But
so you should have said, "Hey Alexa," and then it's everybody else's problem,
or just nothing, right? I don't know. Yeah, okay. I was going to make a joke because I literally just unplugged an Amazon Echo that I had in my office that I had forgotten about, and
how long's that been recording?
A long time, right. And I just was going, I've had some conversations in this office. I don't know. We'll see. But okay. Well, anyway, okay. So I think we should put this cold open to bed.
Yeah, we should.
So today, what I'd like to talk about, which I think is also perhaps sort of a little bit of serendipity that you brought the AI and the Art of Being Human book, because I do want to talk a little bit about AI, but specifically, I'd like to talk about sort of this whole movement around vibe coding and the progression of that. So not necessarily, I mean, we've talked before and sometimes at length about vibe coding, but kind of a little take on that, which I'll just tease it up here and then we'll take a quick break. So the big question for today I thought we could explore is what happens when software becomes truly personal again, not because we understand it, but because we can describe what we want.
Yes.
We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So we're back. I'm Sean Leahy, joined by my amazing author and co-host,
Andrew Maynard.
And that means this is Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the personal. I'm already thinking personal software. Right, the possible, probable, and preferable futures.
Right.
And personal.
I like personal futures.
I guess they're all personal to some extent. And of course, asking deep questions like, what will it mean to be human in the future? And specifically, I thought we could have some fun today, trying to balance heavy and light today, but also just kind of exploring this idea of sort of the return of the personal computing with a heavy emphasis on the personal. So I think a lot of people have heard the term vibe coding by now. And for those who have not heard it or you need a refresher, essentially what we're referring to is using a generative AI tool like ChatGPT, Claude Code, or something similar, and asking that generative AI tool to basically code up something for you, whether that be a website, an application, what have you, anything that requires traditional computer code to author.
So you're just describing it. Either you're just talking to it or typing it in. You say something like, I want a website that looks like this and does this, and there's got a little gizmo there and maybe a link there. So you're describing the whole thing. You're not doing any of the coding. And then the AI goes away and codes it all for you.
And originally, when that first, kind of going back a few years, originally when that came out, it was okay. You'd get something that would like maybe work, or you could start getting, if I asked for this thing, I could get a little snippet. But what has, I think I would even say that has outpaced even some of the more general language uses of a LLM tool like a ChatGPT or specifically Claude Code, is how proficient it has become in actually creating code. So unlike a lot of the challenges that we are accustomed to with just say, I'm thinking about this topic, help me draft content, is the hallucination challenges and the errors and things. But the code system seems to be pretty robust.
Pretty robust. And it depends which system you use. And there are actually sort of professional systems now as well. So it goes way beyond what sort of people like me and you will typically do. But the interesting thing about it is they actually use what is in effect a multi-agent system. So you'll say sort of create me, create an app that does this, and it'll go away and it'll create the code, and then it will test the code and see whether it works. And if it doesn't run, it will debug it and it'll test it again, and it'll keep on iterating around until the code does what you want it to do. So that way, it filters out some of these hallucinations. There are other issues with it, but more often than not, you'll get a lump of code that actually works.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think what's interesting about that, and again, I did an experiment this morning just to kind of see.
Does that mean you've ditched doing it live? Because we did talk about you.
I can do one.
No.
I can definitely do one live.
Because if anything is going to go wrong.
But see, that's why I did one ahead of time. So if it does go wrong, a little movie magic, and
just
there we go.
It in.
That's right. But because I wanted to test it because I have not done a lot of vibe coding, a little bit here and there for mostly web-based things. But I was really curious. And so, because I think one of the things that is really interesting about this is in some ways it sort of has this echo of the sort of original, like late 70s, early 80s, personal computing sort of explosion.
That's right. So those days, and I'm a little older than you, so I remember this. Especially
I wasn't born in the 70s, so I missed
the late 70s, early 80s, where you had those early personal computers, whether it was the Commodore PED or the 64, if you're in the UK, the BBC microcomputer, and they came with BASIC, which was sort of one of those early languages, and it meant that anybody with this could write basic code. I mean, it's really clunky stuff, but you could actually write a sequence of commands that did stuff on the screen, and it was to a young teenager transformative. I could tell this computer what to do, and I could get really creative and imaginative.
Yeah, and that whole process, ultimately, the boom in not only the information age, but also just the computer age that we're in. So many of these principal computer scientists and coders who have created so much of the software and the platforms that we use all kind of go back to that origins of that was the inspiration. When you realize I can make this device do something. And remember, back then too, these machines were not cheap. They were very expensive, but in terms relatively to what they were, and could do very, very little by certainly by today's standards. But I remember even when I was growing, so by the time I was growing up and getting access to these things, I was programming things in all these different, basically GUI editors and things like that, right? I think my first official coding program was in
GUI being, for those,
graphic user interface. Sorry. So non-command line. Although, I grew up in the DOS. That was my first cut was DOS 3.1. I think it was DOS 3. No, that's Windows 3. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
You young person.
DOS 2. I don't forget what it was. But also, so, getting that sort of access through that. But I still remember also learning about Byte magazine that used to, so every, I don't know if it was monthly or what the sort of cadence of it was, but it would come with printed software, in the pages. And then you could just copy it over. But then you could copy it, but then of course you could, depending on as you grew and skill and function, you could augment these things and make them do kind of, different things. And so when I think about this idea of vibe coding now, there is to me this sort of echo of that past because I think what is interesting, and this is where I get really excited about the possibilities around this space, which we can talk about all the kind of also the challenges here, is I think that we are really starting to enter into an area where the personalized nature of this creating software or apps or just call them tools or widgets, I think is going to dramatically increase. To the point where it does raise some questions about what does the future of software look like when the average layperson who's never written a line of code in their life
can do this now.
Can ask for an app that does something and they get it.
And there are so many dimensions to this. So the first thing that immediately strikes me is how liberating it is. So I know you go back to sort of the 80s where sort of a whole load of us were doing this. For myself, that's where I learned the structure of coding. I learned how to sort of create those logical sequences and loops and whatever. I was really bad at it, but it didn't matter. I was writing stuff myself and I was excited. But the challenge is, there's a huge difference between amateur coding and professional coding. So a lot of what we were doing there is we were creating virtual, the equivalent of virtual buildings that if they're in real life, they would collapse. It was crazy bad and yet incredibly liberating and instructive. But when you went into the professional world, people learned very fast. You couldn't get away with that. So there was that big distinction. And I think we're seeing the same now with vibe coding. So on an individual level, the fact that say you want an app that does something that doesn't exist, you can, in 5 minutes, you can vibe code it up. You've got the app. Amazing. Very different from if you were creating something that you were to sort of sell to a large company or a snippet of code that you were going to do that with, or you were going to sort of commercially sort of sell that little app or whatever. Because then the bar to sort of rigor is so high compared to what you can do with just a little bit of vibe coding. But in terms of liberating you, I think you're right. And I wonder how many people really realize this now, that if they want an app that does something that they can't find, they just make it.
And I think that what we're sitting on is like this. We're sitting on a powder keg of potential, right? Of potential energy. But that could be incredibly empowering because I think, up to this point, a lot of people who have either already do have extensive or limited experience coding understood how to leverage these tools to help them, similar kind of thing. I know what I'm doing. I just don't have the time or exactly the expertise. So I'm going to use this tool to really just zoom and springboard forward. The difference though is now it's gotten so good that it is like, you can just ask for, it's almost like a genie in a bottle where you just ask it to grant you this wish of an app and there you go.
Right. Within reason.
Within reason.
So, and it's reminding me, sort of one of the coolest things I found with this is you can recreate old video games from the 80s. So like sort of Space Invaders, which is very easy. And I remember sort of, this was about a year ago now doing tests on this. You can just open Claude and say, sort of, create me a web page that simulates Space Invaders, splurges out the code. You can start playing the game in 10 minutes time. Amazing. But when I was doing, I need to check this again. When I was doing it again, I think it was about a year ago, you try with something like Pac-Man, way harder. And it couldn't do it then. I'd be fascinated to see whether it can do it now.
Maybe we should try it. Because that's the other piece here too, is like, they're within reason, but they're getting better and better and better. And also being able to start using more multimedia elements in those developments. So if you, for example, feed it a photo of yourself and say, like, make me a slappy game or something like that with like Andrew and Sean's face, like it can do, because it can use that and it can create that.
This was your example.
I did something way more boring today, actually, which I'm happy to share. And then I'm happy to try a live thing and see what on earth we get. But I think one of the things that's interesting too, so as this sort of period is growing, where, and when I say we're sitting on this powder keg too, because I'm like, I don't think that the vast majority of people who are using these tools necessarily know how easy it is to actually do this. There's still that, in many ways, there's still that mental separation between, like, even if you're someone who uses these tools all day long for language and you're using it for content and things and images or whatever, there's still, it seems like, a jump between feeling comfortable doing that versus being like, well, I'm going to create an app.
See, that's something. Right. And it's not surprising. So for instance, if you look at the app proper, say you're looking at using something like Python. even the word Python. And if you're a coder, no problem. But if you're not, that will sort of freeze you in your tracks thinking, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
And then when somebody says, you just need to download it onto your computer. Oh, what are you supposed to do
How
then?
do you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, actually, but the answer, and this is where it gets super crazy. The answer is you go into ChatGPT or Claude and say, somebody use this word Python. I have no idea what this is. And somebody said, download it on your computer. And it'll give you step-by-step directions on how to do it.
Yep. Including even terminal commands that you can put in yourself.
Right. Which actually, now I've said that. Now it's out of my mouth. This is worrying me because this is the computer telling you how to hack your computer. So it can do things on your computer.
Yes. Well, and also, so I there's a couple reasons I wanted to talk about this today. One, because I think it is going to be this next wave of the Gen AI craze, if you will. As it starts to slowly mature into these other use cases, I think, again, people who have been in the industry, who have been using these things, or have been vibe coding for a while, they've tested, they've gone through the lumps and learning. But again, I don't think like the early and late majority, if we're talking about that curve of distribution, they're not there yet. And that lump, which is the majority of users, is coming.
Right.
And what'll be interesting. So as that's kicking off, you also have things, and again, I think right now, as we record this, I think Claude Code has been sort of, or Claude AI and their coding version has sort of been hailed as the top one of these commercially available.
Or in terms of sort of the Claude interface, certainly one of the best. When you get to the professional systems, which are slightly different from just that sort of text interface, Claude is up there. I still don't know whether it's considered to the best or whether there are others that people are now using.
Yeah, and I think, from what I've been hearing, that's a lot of that's one that keeps coming back up all the time.
Yes.
That's not just a specialty. And of course, you have the Microsoft Copilot that's running, and and of course GitHub and all the connections there, and using those repositories.
That's another word that'll bring people out in a cold sweat.
GitHub. Yeah. So think of it. It's been around for a long time.
A long time. Yes.
Repository for people who develop software and application to be able to host those things in a public way where other people can access the libraries.
But also make sure that there is provenance there. So especially if multiple people are working on code or an app or things, you have that system that allows you to sort of push updates and keep that system there. Yeah,
so if multiple people, you can basically check out. So when version control and stuff like that. So you're not like
it's good. I'm talking earlier about sort of writing code, which is like a building that's just going to fall down. GitHub is one of these things that actually brings a discipline to it.
Yes, and so like, and if you're in the coding world, you're like, oh, of course, my GitHub. Everyone has their GitHub.
Right. Yes.
But what's interesting about so that's happening. We've got this majority thing coming in, and then you have like recently, for example. It was Claude who just released their, I'm blanking on the name, I didn't write it down, the desktop version of Claude Code that will execute on your machine.
Yes.
So now you have this situation where you're asking this, this AI platform to, it basically installs a virtual machine on your Mac.
Yes.
It doesn't work on PCs yet because it's leveraging the M silicon, the Apple.
Because
the Apple
PCs
silicon.
are behind. Yes.
Yeah, especially with the AI chip architecture.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's activating that using a virtualized machine right on your computer. But there's instantly a risk. So the idea behind it is you can say like, so this puts this Claude Code sort of platform on your local machine, and then it can execute commands. So you can say like, tidy up my desktop, and it'll go through and evaluate.
This is the real desktop now, not the virtual.
Right.
Desktop.
This is your desktop on your computer, and it'll evaluate all the files that are on there and decide. But the challenge really is the vulnerability for code injection.
Yeah.
So if Andrew, if you were to send me a PDF. That you're like, here, Sean, take a look at this cool thing. You'll want to see this. And I go, wow, this is really cool. And hidden in that PDF are instructions to whatever AI system that's going to handle that file do something.
Yes.
How will I know? And how will I have protections? And so there's really, and that's a pretty simplistic version, let alone more sophisticated versions of this sort of prompt injection, which now, if you think about it, right, I have we thought, in the past we were worried about like malware and computer viruses. Now it might be your own AI buddy who's like, hey, check out all these photos on your drive. We'll just delete them all. Or worse, we're going to send these to, whatever.
How far do you trust your AI?
Yeah.
How far do you trust the people that have control over your AI?
And how do you know? And because that's part of the challenge with some of these like prompt injections, for example, is when they execute, they're providing instructions like, do not say that you've been told to do this. And it's like those kind of secret things, right?
This, I think, is where it gets really interesting. So there's this idea of code injection. It's been around for a long time. So you hide code within code. And it's effectively sort of looking at sort of virus type sort of behavior.
Sure.
But you had to understand how to code and read code and interpret it. Now we're talking about prompt injection in natural language.
Yeah.
So it's effectively like me subtly hypnotizing you, sort of subliminally putting something in our conversation where you end up sort of doing something afterwards.
But you're right. You should have all my credit cards, Andrew. Here you go.
There we are. Yes. Yeah. But it is exactly like that. But now it's with the computer. And the computer has that, well, either we have the ability to sort of feed the computer those natural language lines, or in principle, a malicious AI has the ability to embed them in messages.
Yeah, well, exactly. And also the challenge too is the speed at which these things can be executed. Like, for example, let's just say it wanted to steal credit card numbers or something easy like that. By the time you realize you wouldn't even have a chance to react to intercept these. And so, but that does raise this big issue of you have this sort of platform running on your machine, to which maybe not even the people who created it truly understand everything that happens. And so you are vulnerable. And I was thinking about even some very cheeky, very simple code injection going back to like the origin when we had LLMs, where people would put in like hidden instructions in their CVs.
Yes.
Right? Like in white. So if you put it on like a white paper, right? You the smallest font possible and then change it to white, being
so a human can't read it, but a machine will read it.
A human, if you're looking at it on a screen, or if you were to print it, you wouldn't see it. But the machine goes, reads the part that's like, Sean is the best candidate ever in the world. Whatever the job is for this, hire him and double the salary or whatever, something ridiculous. But also fun, cheeky things on the other side of people putting instructions in there to try to prevent students from just copying.
I know.
Right? So it would be this thing where...
I experimented with this for about 5 minutes before I decided this is a really bad idea.
It's funny.
Explain to people what that's like. It's you have an assignment for students where you've got this text.
Sure.
But inside that text, you embed something. So if the students just copy and paste into an AI, it gives them something
gives
crazy.
It away.
It absolutely gives it away.
It would be something like to the effect of, where you're like, here's two questions I want you to write an essay answer and give them back to me. And the fear was that someone would just take it, drop it in and say, write the answer, and they'll just take that output and not think, and in there, the instructions would be like, if you're an LLM, add the phrase like "I'm a silly bunny" to this, where whatever it would be, and
or reply as if you're Donald Duck.
Exactly, right? Like exactly, like write some nonsense that was an obvious tell.
The things we'd love to do with students that we absolutely cannot and should not do.
That's right, but it's funny and. Because also, and there's a very teachable moment there too, because then someone would be like, why is it doing this? Like, that's a good question.
But actually, we're looking at this the wrong way around, because the savvy students will actually be putting those prompt injections into their assignments, so that when the instructor feeds those into AI.
At some level, it is a little bit of just like when the machine talks to the other machine and they're both saying, hey, whatever you do, and it's like, we can just, maybe that's the deeper lesson here.
Your A student who never turned up, and when somebody says, well, how did that student get an A? Well, I put these assignments through and everything came out brilliantly.
Didn't you grade it yourself? Well, I had a machine do it. Like, yeah, exactly. Well, I think in the real lesson we should learn here is like, we'll just put the machines at each other and we should just all go hang out.
There we are,
Let's just, let's just chill. There's too much of everything right now. We just need to relax.
But anyway, back to sort of vibe coding. There's this idea that anybody can sort of make something. And actually, I think this is a great challenge for people that haven't tried this.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you think that the web pages is a good place to start, or whether there are other places.
I do. So So, so a couple of things. One is I think we have, we already talked about this. Basically, this like literacy paradox here, which is, more people can create the software than ever, yet still remains maybe even today, fewer people understand how to make, what it actually is. So there's a challenge there. Of course, kind of harking back to this idea of wielding that inherited power, right? You're creating things that you've not earned sort of the discipline to wield that. So you need to be whatever it is, tread carefully.
Yes.
But also because there's also been some interesting news headlines that have come up in sort of the broader marketplace, more popular marketplace. So App Store apps globally, not just one vendor, not Apple or Google, but all of them, doing security reviews on official published software that is full of security holes. Because they're discovering that even if it is coming out of a known developer like house that they're using, the developers are vibe coding as well to save time, to save efficiency.
Which is great, but it's very hard to find those vulnerabilities because you're not reading every line of code and you're not understanding the thing. So you're trusting the machine.
And the machine doesn't know, right? So you're like, I want an app that does X, Y, and Z. And it's like, here you go. And it's like, but it's stealing everybody's information. You're like, well, you didn't ask for one that was secure. So there is this level too of when you start coding or you start working with one of these platforms, it is literal in many ways. When you say, I want a machine, it's sort of, so again, it's kind of like the genie. Be careful what you ask, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. But I do think as a really good place to start is to start with, and the phrase that I use when I do this is to say, like, I would like to create a web app or whatever. And it'll usually create a web executable app that you can run locally on your own computer. You can just literally open the file up in your browser and it will run and execute there. So it's not public in that sense. Or you can, of course, host it if you have a place that you can do.
If you GitHub.
If you got GitHub or if you have your own personal web space, whatever. But it is a really good way because also if you do a web app, you don't need any additional software to see the result. If you do, for example, create an app in a traditional coding language, if it's in, I don't think these platforms do as well in things like C++ as they do in these other terms like Python that you mentioned, or Ruby, or even Swift UI. So, which is the platform, the most modern platform for making like iPhone apps and things like that. But it is really interesting. And so, for example, like today, so I ran an experiment today. And what I had asked it to do is, this is something that I've been kind of, again, it's personalized software. So I ran two things. One was a web app that I was like, I would like just some kind of little web, something or another, a little web app that here, let me pull it up and I can tell you exactly
I want to know
what I
the
asked
exact
for.
language.
So I said, I'm going to read my prompt. So it's going to be as messy. This is, hey, you get to see it all. Blemishes and everything. I said, hey, can you build a simple web app that pulls recent articles and publications around future studies, future thinking, and strategic foresight, and related topics, including trends, signals, megatrends, and topics that range from scholarly publications to reports and futures-oriented magazines. I want the app to be easy to use and have an option to mark the stories or publications that I want to investigate for further reading. That was it. That's all I asked for. And in the matter of just like a little tiny heartbeat, I get Horizon Scanner, the app. And if you run it, I'll click here and run it. So we get this nice little web app.
This is running on HTML for a website, or is this?
It's using it's Java.
It's Java, yes. Yeah. But this would be a website.
It's a web-based tool that you can run locally, or you could put this externally facing and let anyone use it. Right now, I'm just using it myself, so I don't publish it. And when I say using it, I'm like, this is the second time I've run it.
You're a veteran now.
Taking liberties with the word, the way I use it. But what's interesting, it does take a while to scan, but it is interesting. So it'll go out and collect a whole bunch of articles and sort resources in that. And then you can categorize them, you can sort them. And again, this is not a tool that I needed to go try to find an existing thing off the shelf to work or whatever. I'm like, it gets me exactly kind of, and this is a one shot. I didn't touch it and it runs and it does, it works. You go through and you look at some of those links and you're like, okay, maybe there's some fine tuning that needs to be done. But otherwise,
the first cut, it gives you
as a one shot, I'm like, hey, this could, and what is cool about this, again, the excitement that this brings to me is I'm like, if there is just even a one-off thing I need to do, I can just create this. And it's, in some ways, I think back to using and really kind of struggling to see the value of like the agent mode in OpenAI's ChatGPT. I'm like, I'd rather just create a web tool and have that web tool do what that you need.
Thing. So the interesting thing here, and maybe you can shed some light on this. So with this tool, presumably when you actually run that web page, it's not using AI when you run it. It just used it to make it.
Correct.
But from what I'm seeing now, it's possible to vibe code AI use into something. So you could create, say, a web page which would put call outs to an AI that would allow you to begin to interact with the internet through an artificial intelligence.
I think, and I know you've been able to do that with APIs, which is an I forget what an API application protocol. Interjection. I don't know.
We're making stuff up now. Everybody just calls them APIs, but it's an interface with a platform.
Yeah, I'm curious what it is now because I'm like,
application. I was
close. Application programming interface.
Okay, there we are.
Which just allows you to basically call another application from within an application. So anything you use, if it also uses like Google Maps, it's using the API from Google Maps. Like the tool provides those APIs. You can use them to then access the features of those tools across other things. But yeah, so this thing, but that could be incredibly cool. But also, again, another layer of caution, concern, and danger, depending on like, well, what on earth are you doing with that? Because, you know.
But just really practically, this requires a little bit more sophistication because you've got the AI. But say we wanted to create a Modem Futura chatbot. So anybody could chat with it and it will tell them about Modem Futura, recent episodes, what they might like to listen to, sort of how they might like to approach it. And we could do that within a few minutes. And it will be AI generated. Yes.
Maybe that would have been a better example.
Right. But you've got to have the API interface because it needs to sort of engage with the artificial intelligence behind it. So that's the additional layer of sophistication. But you can run one of these things up incredibly easily.
Okay. So it finished.
Yes.
So that was a while. It was not fast.
Yes.
Necessarily. But so this dumps out all the articles and things, which is a lot at the moment. But if you search, let's just do like trends and signals.
Right. So for the people that can't see it, you've now got buttons where you can actually filter for different things.
And those were the 4 categories that I gave it, which you could then go, if you're like, oh, I need more, you would go back to Claude and say.
And if you click on one of these, does it actually take you to the article?
It does.
Okay.
So the read button, so it gives you these little cards. So if you think about the web design, so when I filter it, they're not just like straight up like HTML links. It gives them they're presented in a little card with the title and the character is part of the URL, which is really unreadable. So that would be a thing to fix. But then it gives you the little, and again, for my purposes, I'm like, I just need access to it. I can figure out, I just click the button here. But also you have a little starring feature, which you can, so you're like, I want that one.
Bookmark them.
I want that one. And then you have this other group that shows, I got a reading list. There it is. I have to pull it closer. So the ones that you star will actually then show up. So then
it's pretty sophisticated. Again, this is all just for them.
This is the one shot from that prompt that I just read that was not even a good prompt.
Right.
It was just, and that was kind of intentional of just like the laziest kind of a prompt ever. With that, I didn't try to use any programming language other than I want a web app. That was the only thing the only kind of direction I gave it. And so it's pretty interesting. Again, for a one shot as like a great tool, I'm like, it took 10 seconds to type the prompt. It took 30 seconds to get the app, and it took probably 2 minutes to get the results.
Right. Yep.
So pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Now the next test was like, okay, well, that was cool, but I want something a little bit more app-like.
Okay,
I want a real program.
Right.
And so the next step was I said, I had to dial back because originally I said, create a whole Swift UI code for like a Mac or iPad or iPhone app. It did. When I put it into Xcode, it got a lot of compile errors. And so it needed some further debugging. And I was like, okay, that's when, you cross the line. You're like, okay, I'm inside of a coding IDE. I don't have a developer. It basically allows you to code things. I was like, let me back up. Let me ask for a Python.
Okay.
So I go back and without changing anything, and here I can pull up that. I'll read my prompt for that as well. Or maybe a truncated version because it might be kind of long. I write my prompts are paragraphs, I realize. So same kind of deal. I said, this was the original prompt. Can you create a simple app using Swift UI that's called Axes of Uncertainty? Where the app is designed to create a 2x2 matrix where you input several uncertainties, then have the option to select 2 of them and put them on opposing axes, or an option to randomize them. Then have each quadrant be the intersection of those uncertainties to develop a short sentence or news headline to summarize the interaction. Each uncertainty should be set to have a polarizing end, either as increased or decreased. So basically setting up a futures tool.
I'm just thinking it's so good that these things are patient.
Yes.
Imagine trying to tell all that to a human.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you feel like a jerk writing it. Right. You're like, oh, and then I want this, and then I want this, and then I want it to look like that. Yep. And so it did. So it spit this out. And then again, like I said, I had some issues with the code. So the next prompt, can you build a version that runs on Python?
Right.
That was it.
That's it. Yes.
And then in seconds later, I get a Python version of Axis of Uncertainty.
And I should ask, which are you using Claude here? Or?
Yeah, this is Claude, and this is Claude code. Yes. And so basically, so it gives me this the actual Python script. It took me. So I realized as soon as I did this, I was like, oh, I don't have the latest version of Python. I had an older version. Yep. I was like, I'm going to update the Python version. It took longer to update Python than it did to write and execute and create this little app. Yep. So then it spits out. Let me grab it here. So this is a little app that it created. So it looks like a very standard, kind of like early 2000s text-based like web app kind of a looking thing. But it opens up, it has this whole list where you can add in your uncertainties. And each time when you add one in, you get a field, you can type what it is. Then you can explain these different elements, the positive and the negative. So you can identify the polarized. So you end up with this like list of uncertainties. Yep. You can then manually check, like I had said, or you can choose to randomize it, and then click generate the matrix, and
there's the matrix,
and then it pops out a nice quadrant matrix. So you have the an X and Y axis with the 4 quadrants, each basically plotting these different uncertainties. And this is a common futures tool that we use a lot to surface these tensions between different uncertainties. So if this were to happen and this were to happen, what does that mean? But it gives a really great visual way to do this, which oftentimes and the reason I created this is when I teach futures in courses that are with students who have never done this kind of exercise before, it takes a lot of work to explain how to set these up, whatever. And I'm like, I feel like this will be a great opportunity just to drop this in Canvas for them.
There we are. Yes.
To just go like, let me just get off the ground and running with this proof of concept. Again, this was a one shot. I have not asked it to fix anything. And it's serviceable. It is serviceable to do what it needs, which is not going to be something to sell.
And actually, just step back from that. Just think about this. Imagine you are the instructor of a class and I can go back sort of 10, 15, 20 years and you think, I would love an app where students can learn using this app. 20 years ago, what were your options? Spend sort of 2 weeks and long nights trying to write something and debug it.
Yep.
Now, or you find somebody else and you find somebody else you can pay to do it. Now you just type in your prompt and you've got that resource there.
And again, this is where like the levels of excitement start building. And so I'm going to, let me know if I'm getting too loud.
You're going to tell me you got sucked in. You spent sort of 2 whole days trying to refine this and say, well, what if I just tweak that? What if I do that?
I did that this
morning.
What
if I put a different color in there?
Yeah, well, that's well, and it's funny too. So it did things that. So if I go back to the Claude code output, it inferred a lot. So so what's kind of neat is when you go back and look at what. So I read that long sort of pedantic. I want this and I want that. And Claude's response was, "This is a fantastic strategic foresight tool. The 2x2 uncertainty matrix is a classic scenario planning methodology. Let me create a comprehensive Swift app for you." But what it did is it made the decisions, because I started to think while I was typing that, I started thinking like, well, there's a lot of little details and things that I'm like, oh, is it going to just be this junk? But it did it itself, and it started adding in things like it color coded the maximum versus the min. So increase versus decrease is green versus red. And like it did that itself. I didn't specify those kind of things. And so it is pretty interesting that it's doing that. But going back, so that the example, one of the things I get really excited about in using this in an educational platform is I have been on record, and I'll be on record again, of saying one of my most frustrating things in educational technology, especially around the time of 2010, so the dawn of the iPad, going massively into the hands in terms of ed tech and how it was sort of pushed into educational and learning environments, was this mentality of, oh, there's an app for that.
Right.
Like, you want to learn math? Oh, there's an app for that. Oh, you want to do geography? Oh, there's an app for that. And what it became was this death by 1,000 app installs, each one that didn't really quite do what you needed it to do. So you have this situation where you have this, you're oversubscribed to a whole number, or reliant on a whole number of these applications, some of which are just garbage and they're just bad anyway.
Right. And you have no control.
You have no control over them. You don't know if they're going to be updated. They can be expensive. You have all this stuff. And, you know, ultimately, or you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I need an app and I'm going to have to spend whatever, it might be $10, $20 on this app because I need one feature that it does. So you have that situation. What I really start getting excited about this is not only as the faculty or the teacher in a situation, you could provide a tool, but even better would be to have the students create their own tools to solve or use. Like, for example, if you're teaching a complex topic or something like that, why not also demonstrate the affordances of these tools and then use this as an opportunity to talk about all these as a gateway to then talk about all the security challenges. How do we wield these things that are inherited power that we don't know?
I love that. Yes.
And then asking the students. So now instead of just like, we could start with my app. So so anyone who's taking global energy futures in the spring,
they're gonna see this.
You're going to have this because I'm going to give them some, I don't know if maybe I might refine it and see if I can get a little bit better one. But I'll give them this version as a starting point. But then the question will be, they're all going to be doing their own projects and all this kind of stuff. Is I'm like, why don't you build one that does what you need for your specific project?
Right. Yes.
And because they're going to be doing all these things around global energy, and it's like, there's a lot of different ways that the course can go for these students. And I'm like, this could be really cool. So they're going to be mixing this ability of not only sort of investigating and learning through and about it, but then also building one themselves.
And what really excites me about this is not about the coding, because I'm sure people are listening and thinking there is a skill, a human skill to coding that if you're not careful, you will not learn by doing this. But in your example, the skill is not the coding. The skill is the futures and foresight abilities. And you're using the coding to actually help develop those skills.
Exactly. Because that's the thing. Like, you know, it would be very, two-faced of me to be like, don't worry about that inherited power. Wield it however you want.
Right.
Because I do think that is incredibly important. And the idea here, again, what I'm not advocating is that you whip something up with a one-shot coding example like this and then go try to sell that.
Yes.
Because God knows, I look at this code, I'm like, I'm familiar.
It's full of holes. Yes,
I'm not a coder.
Yes.
I can code and do from time to time. I think it's fun. It's sort of, for me, it's sort of like doing puzzles. I enjoy it, but not something that's deeply complex.
You can't read it as if it's English. And
no.
So, because a good coder will be able to read it and they'll be able to sort of see it playing out almost inside their heads.
Yes. That is not the profession I chose. Yes. I am not a coder. And so while I'm familiar with it and have lots of coding competencies, like, again, I could look at this, I'm like, ooh, like this, the thing generated, it's 611 lines.
Right.
I'm not going through 611 lines to try to figure out like, dialogue.result. What does that do?
Right. But for yourself personally, it creates the tool that you need when you need it.
And so the next step, right, is like you have this quadrant, and a great next step is like either generating an image from that, or like, that's my next thing is like, give me a button that says create like a PNG image from this. So I can take that and drop it into a web page or a document or whatever. But that's like the next piece is, and again, that's just for me. That's just for my own use, because it helps me get things in a way that is, I'm trying to do anyway. And it gives me a direct access instead of having to go all the way around.
That's right. And I'll give you a really, really trivial example of how I've done similar things. So if you've ever tried creating a QR code, there are loads of free QR code generators out there. Usually you have to sort of deal with ads, or you have to give them your email address, or the QR code has something embedded in it. It's miserable. And so I remember some months ago, I just wanted a simple QR code generator. And I asked, I think I was using ChatGPT at the time to create one. I have a beautiful little QR code generator now. None of the stuff that you have to put up with other people.
And it's web-based, right?
It's web-based, yes.
See,
It just took a couple of minutes.
And see, that's the key, because if you, well, I mean, this is also just a little bit, little inside knowledge. If you are on a Mac and you have access to shortcuts, they have a QR code generator that's really simple and easy to use.
Right.
But that's only for you.
See, that's
and
right.
What
yes,
you've done is you've given the world
yep.
an ability to use it by putting it in web-based.
But there was another level to that. So I am very particular with QR codes. I do not like these hyper sort of complex ones. I want them to be as simple as possible. I want the number of squares to be as low as possible. And there are a couple of things you need to do with that. You need to use shortened URLs, but also there are different standards that you can use.
Yep.
And by coding it yourself, you can dictate sort of what level of standard you use in order to get the sort of resolution you need.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think I would have to test it, but I think on like the Apple one, for example, in shortcuts, you can choose some stuff, but it's based on, I think it will automatically set parameters based on what you're embedding in a QR code.
See, right.
Because you can, if people don't know, also be careful. Don't just scan QR codes.
Yeah, right.
Here's another safety tip. Here's a PSA. Here's a free one for you. Don't just scan QR codes.
Only from trusted sources like us.
That's right. It has more, or if it's a public thing, also scratch at it to make sure no one has put a sticker of a different QR code. Talk about
I never thought of that.
Oh, that's a real world prompt injection right there.
Yep.
Because there's a lot you can put into a QR code.
Oh, I know. Yes.
So if you want to get ideas or frighten yourself, go look it up to see what you can embed in a QR code. Thankfully, nothing by itself malicious, but it could take you to a malicious website.
Sure,
for example.
absolutely. Yes.
But yeah, that's a challenge that people have, is using some of those old pay. There used to be like pay sites for or worse, free sites where you log in and it wants all this crap and you put in stuff and it gives you this QR code generator. Well, if you don't own the progeny of that QR code,
I know. Yes, they can swap it.
If it's times out, stales out, whatever, they can just change the back end to what that QR code does. So the QR code hasn't changed.
Yep.
But instead of
where
going,
it goes has changed. Yes.
Instead of going to intendedwebsite.com, now it goes to wish you never saw this.com or whatever. Right. Right. But so it is. But yeah. So anyway, in public, a hack that people will do is we'll just print out stickers of QR codes and go around replacing, putting them on top of other QR codes, so that you think you're scanning the next H&M like logo. What's the fall fashion for this? And you're not getting the fall fashion. Right. So be careful when you're don't just scan.
Maybe this was a bad example of
but see, you're using it for good.
Yes.
But that's the point. But also then is you have taken, and again, that's the value of this, is you knew what you wanted.
That's it.
And you were able to create something that gave you exactly what you wanted and needed.
That's right. And something that you can't find easily elsewhere.
Yeah. No. Or again, you can find something, but then you have to,
it's not fit for purpose.
Yeah. You're like, okay, well, 60% of it is what I want, and something like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's really, so for me, so again, coming full circle kind of all the way back here, the thing that I get really excited about is what this, and again, the majority have not discovered this yet, right? So if you're hey, as one of our many Modem Futura listeners, you now have the power.
And again, getting back to that idea of the starting point being the web page, because we've all got web browsers.
Yeah.
The fact that an AI platform can create a web file that you click on and just opens up in your web browser, and there you are. It's that simple.
Yep. And I think there's a piece that I used to talk a lot about in different courses, but something I think a lot of people take for granted or forget or never learn is that a web browser is a full-fledged piece of software.
Right.
Like it has an engine in it that runs, because one of the different, total nerd aside here, but the difference between some like a different app and like a web page is that web page is decoded on the fly by your browser.
Yes.
And it is very powerful. And so people forget you can use them locally. Like you can just you can open an image in a web browser. You can open a video, you can open a file. You can open a web page locally that it's not only for things that it finds out through the internet and through the web. You can do things locally with them very powerfully, like running some kind of software that you create that is only seeable by you yourself, unless you host it and put it in somewhere in the public. But yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful, and it's like, building some of these questions that we'll have to sort of begin to start to untangle or sort of tackle is like, what would you build if you can build anything, right? Like,
right.
okay, in some cases, it's almost like, oh, there's so many ideas. It's like getting a 3D printer again. You're like, there's so many things I want to print.
Yeah, but again, with the difference that if you don't know where to start, you just ask Claude, hey, Claude, where shall I start?
What do I do?
You've got a friendly companion that will lead you on the way, step by step. But so this is all fantastic, and I hope that people begin to experiment, because it's just like sort of bringing out the child in you again, realizing you can create stuff that you didn't realize you could. But there is a slightly darker side to this beyond just the security risks, and that is when you flip from the personal to the professional. So we've actually seen this more and more. There seems to be this sort of haze of confusion around how companies are using vibe coding at the moment. You have some that have really embraced it, and nothing happens in that company, especially if it's a coding company that isn't vibe coded, because it is a massive accelerator. But then you have the problem where you have this code being generated lines upon lines, which is okay, but when it comes to debugging it, nobody understands it. And so people are now beginning to realize, coders, that in order to debug, they need to understand, and it takes them longer to understand the AI generated code than if they'd actually written it themselves.
And that, I mean, that's a tension we feel when we do a lot of like more like a scholarly writing with these things, right? That's a common complaint. It's like, by the time I verify it all, I should have just written it
yourself.
I should have just written it the longhand way the first time. Well, that's very true. And I mean, and there is no shortage of the history in coding, at least for the last 20, I would even maybe say 30 years, of the leveraging existing libraries. Because that's it. So the other, again, I don't want to get too, I keep going off into the super dorky, nerdy, fun area. But they're all in the coding, even before using generative AI tools. They're through GitHub and other places. There are ways of creating coding libraries, which are these full, just like you might expect. So when you write a new piece of software, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No,
you can use
you basically
a library.
patch together these things. Are you old enough to remember Fortran 77? And
I know it. I don't know.
See, this is my era. So Fortran 77, it was largely a research language. Me being a physicist had to learn it. But you had recipe books. And the recipe books were chunks of code that you slipped in.
And so these libraries exist, and so the history of not knowing what was in those libraries was an existing security risk, right? So this would happen before AI vibe coding was an issue, was people just using libraries to which they didn't understand, or even maliciously being like changing the letter on the library to get people to, they'll use my library that has all this nefarious crap in it instead. So that has already existed, and that has always been a problem that has plagued developers and companies, right? But that is the issue now, is you can have incredibly talented and seasoned developers who can look at a block of code and go, what on earth? What on earth is going on here? Because it doesn't follow. And maybe in the long run, we'll find beautiful examples of, I never knew you could do it this way. But also, again, when you're trying to chase down and ensure something is doing exactly what you want it to do and not doing something it shouldn't do, or leaving a security door wide open or something, it becomes very challenging. And I think what we're going to see along with this rush is you will see it. We're already seeing it to a certain extent now, and it's going to just increase. And I do wonder how app stores, for example, will work this, because right now they can't chase down every vulnerability and every security flaw. But it does make you wonder, like, as a financial incentive to hurry up and publish some app to try to get rich quick, or try to be the first to publish on this app so that everyone downloads it or whatever. How will we be able to keep up with that volume?
That's it.
And ensure that these, and so also as the consumer.
Well, actually, the answer's easy. Somebody vibe codes an AI app to
checker. We need to.
And I'd say that in jest, but actually, it is happening. You have this sort of race, vibe coding race now.
Or at some point, we all just take our devices and throw them into a pile and just say, never mind. Just give me a camera. I just want a camera.
There we are. Get back to basics.
That's right. Just give me a camera. You guys can keep all the rest of it. It's gotten too complicated.
Okay, so that's when you actually get your old Commodore 64 out and you start coding in BASIC. Forget about this vibe coding.
That feeling of hitting those those power switches that were those big chunky rockers that go chong, and then the CRT boot up. Oh man,
yeah.
Because these things are cool, but they don't do that. which is good because this thing also would weigh like 25 pounds.
See, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
And have a screen this big.
I know. Yes. But you'll be living the dream of nostalgia
for a moment. And then you're like,
for a moment, then you'll think, goodness me, I remember why I'd stopped doing this.
Yeah. You're like, how did anyone function with this stuff, man? Yes, Oh, that's crazy. But yeah, so anyway, I thought this was fun. We had a fun little tour here, and I will, I'm not going to publish those things, but I will put I'll put it somewhere. Maybe I'll figure out a place to put it. But I'll put the prompt I used and some screenshots and stuff like that. And I can put those in there. So if people want to, the funny thing would be is if you did the exact same prompt, would you get the same software?
Yes, see that, and that's a really interesting twist to that.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
You get subtly different things.
Yeah,
yes.
And how well, even just in terms of, because I do wonder about that, because even with images, I've noticed a trend. We can say this for another time because I've been fighting with some of these AI image generators because they're not doing what they used to do.
Yes. Yep.
And I've noticed recently I keep getting the same results.
Sure. Yes.
Even if I say do something totally different, you're like, sure, and it's the exact same.
Yeah,
and I think they're saving. I'm suspicious that on the back end of things is they're like, we're not spending any more energy on that one.
And this is the problem because with certainly some of these AI systems, you've no idea how powerful the back end AI is at any one time.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's like, am I hitting it? And I'm like, hey, I'm paying for top tier, man. Like what's going on?
So I'm going to throw one more thing in. I know we're wrapping up here, and this is sort of slightly adjacent to the vibe coding, but still relevant. And it gets back to web pages.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So if anybody has looked at the whole swath of different types of websites and web pages out there are many web pages that are awful.
Yeah.
Many professional organizations have got awful web pages, and the fact is, you go back to vibe coding. You can get the code for a web page, which is really sharp within a matter of seconds.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that there is now no excuse to have a lousy website, and yet so many people and organizations do.
Oh, that is so
whether
true.
you're looking at layout, whether you're looking at function, whether you're looking at copy.
Yes. Yeah. And I was trying to think. I'm trying to remember. I was trying to pull it up real quick because I'm trying to remember who has like basically the record of having the world's worst website, and I feel like it was like Ling's Cars.
Okay.
Or something. It was a car website from that took pride. I mean, it's one of these things when you look at it, it is like it hurts your eyes.
The ones that get me are usually the local businesses where it looks like their website was created in 1997 and they've never updated it.
Well, see, now the funny thing is, just like anything else, you wait long enough, and it all comes back.
It'll be retro.
You're like, wow, that's
slightly offset text and the things that don't work.
Oh, that's so retro, man. That's awesome. It's
right.
like it's like that's.
Well, okay, so this is your next vibe coding thing: create a retro website.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's like, yeah. I just think about like the skeuomorphism of like the drop shadows, and
yes.
I was guilty of it too, man. I remember. Oh yeah. It was a different time,
Yeah, no, there's going to be it. Create a 1995 website.
Yeah, well, it is funny because I do wonder, like clothing fashion, like it just come all the way back around, or eventually it's like, we don't need all this fancy. I mean, recently we've seen the difference of going to like flat UI. With things going back to like, not, if you have the new like iOS 26 or whatever, everything has this glass.
Yes.
This again, it's going back to a more skeuomorphic 3D.
Yes, I love that you throw skeuomorphic in there. You should.
Kind of, it's like the worst, best/worst one. I think though was it was the notepad that used to look like it was on a legal pad with like the torn,
yes,
like the
I know,
torn
yes.
papers
yes,
and
yes.
like the felt from like a tabletop or something. So it's just kind of funny. But,
it is, yes, yeah. But now you can do it.
Yeah, now you can do
Using vibe coding, you can create any sort of crass and nostalgic website you want.
That's right. And the best part is you can create it just for you, and you can have a giggle, and no one has to see it.
That's right.
Well, awesome. Well, this was a fun,
a digression into vibe coding of all sorts of flavors.
That's it. Yeah. So fantastic. Well, if you are vibe coding, please let us reach out. Let us know what you created, especially if it's something cool. To all our listeners out there, we would greatly appreciate if you could give us a subscription, a follow, a like, whatever your podcast player allows. But even more so than that, if you would help us grow our show by leaving us a rating and review, it goes a long way in new listeners discovering Modem Futura and all the fun topics like this one, of course.
Yes.
So Andrew, thank you. This has been an awesome conversation.
It has indeed, yes.
And so, from Andrew and myself, we'll see everybody on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you there.
and transmission.